Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. Today, I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, I'm John Milor. I'm an author and former chief of cybersecurity, or former chief of U.S. Western Air Defense Sector here in California, uh, in the military.
I know.
Uh, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And I lived part of my childhood in Arkansas growing up, but I also lived on a farm in Madera and then in the inner city of Fresno and in part Arkansas. And now I am. Here, retired military now, but still working and still writing. And the experiences I've had in my life have led to me writing all different kinds of books. I'm a multi-genre author.
That's pretty creative. That's more imagination. Albert Einstein said imagination is greater than knowledge. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you tell me about your past leading up into your present? Exactly how you said it when we were on camera.
yeah. I'll explain what led to Christian ufology. So I I have a background that there's the Christian heritage in my family that came from my great grandparents. They're Pentecostal from the Bible Belt. My great grandmother was from Kentucky, and I have a memory from early childhood when I was 5 years old. We were at a family gathering, and everybody was around the house chatting and you know animated conversations. And Grandma was sitting quietly reading a newspaper, and then she's reading something that's captivated her attention, and so she sets the newspaper down and she's like, everybody, come in here. I got something to announce to the family. And so it was like the E.F. Hutton moment. Everybody is quiet because Grandma started reading an article in the newspaper about a wild goose chase between some UFOs and a police officer. Uh, so this police officer were chasing these UFOs all around Madera County, and this happened in 1975. So if you recall the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that came out in 1976. The opening scene of that movie is police cars running around trying to catch these UFOs. And that's how the movie starts. Well, she read in the newspaper the year before that a scene that sounded exactly like that. And at 5 years old, I remember looking around and seeing all these expressions on people's faces, like, "Why is Grandma reading this?" So, to get context, my great grandmother and my grandfather, he was a minister. They traveled the United States as a ministry team, did the great tent revivals, Holy Ghost revivals, and stuff. They talked about signs and wonders. My grandma had witnessed and experienced angels. She was healed from a stroke miraculously. So she always had these stories about supernatural things, but they were always in the context of her faith. This was completely different. This was out in the left field somewhere, and everybody in the living room was like, "Why is Grandma reading this story that it's not connecting?" Makes metaphors. And I just remember the expressions on everyone's face. And Grandma finished reading these articles. She set the newspaper down and she said, "When I was a little girl, I saw a UFO." She just straight up laid it out. Then she started to elaborate. This was dating back to like 1910 or something like that, when she was a kid living in the plains of Kentucky. Her and her sister, they'd never even seen a car before. They lived out in the middle of nowhere. They had a wagon. They lived on a farm. And her and her sister were walking home on the plains, and they saw this cylindrical UFO fly by right in front of them, maybe 30 feet above the ground, just like right there. It was so close that they saw the bubble on the top. The dude inside was humanoid, turned his head and looked at him. Like, I don't think he waved, but but she did say he turned and looked at him as he flew by. And you're like, "What's that?" So they'd never even seen a car before, and here went this cylindrical, highly polished thing that they'd never seen. They couldn't possibly imagine it. They ran home. They told their mother. She told them, "Don't ever tell anybody this story ever again." And so, well, they did what they were told for what 60 years or so. Now I'm going to tell the story is
You're kind of going out a little bit, Mr. Mahler.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what was you saying now?
So my great grandmother's sister died a while after that. So
sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So all these years, she kept the story to herself, and then now she read it in the newspaper, and she said, "You know what? Those things are real. I don't care what people think. Those things are real." And that made a big impression on me. And from that point on, 5 years old, I got really into like wanting to understand mysterious things of paranormal type nature, which, now we have all these words to describe it. Some of it gets into the occult or New Age or whatever, but I was very interested in it. Something about it spoke to me, like I need to understand this, because my great grandmother, she never saw the need to connect the dots between her faith and the Bible and what she saw. And probably in her mind, just very vague or very basic, was like, that's just part of God's creation. It's bigger than what most people think.
I asked you, I don't want to make it about me, but I want you to explain exactly how you did before. But 2 months ago, I saw some type of white circular dot, but it was shreds of white light. And it were orbiting, and then it just disappeared all of a sudden. What does that mean to you as a spacecraft, or however you said it before?
Okay, so I do believe that the event that happened in Roswell was an actual event, a downed UFO. I know more about that now, about exactly how it happened. It didn't just crash because of a malfunction. We brought it down because we were using some technology to do it, most likely. But regardless of how that happened, we took that technology, we reverse engineered it. A lot of our computer technology we have today came from that. And we've been working on reverse engineering the technology, just like they show in the movie Independence Day, and other shows of that nature. I think the stuff that we have now is nearly indistinguishable, at least from observing it, as from their stuff. You can't tell whose is whose. There may be some differences, like their stuff is probably just way more advanced, period, if you were to get into the nuts and bolts of the technology. We've seen aircraft and things like that they could travel 6 times faster than a nuclear submarine, that we've tracked them on sonar. The Navy's actually released this information. They come out of the ocean and blast into outer space at supersonic speeds that would kill anybody. They defy gravity. They don't follow aerodynamics. They have a propulsion that doesn't generate heat. They can do impossible maneuvers, 90-degree turns at thousands of miles an hour. So is this technology ours? Some of it could be. But I think that it's
do you think we reverse, like, you remember Bob Lazar, how he said that what was in the machine was magical? Do you think we reversed technology now with that magical core system that Bob Lazar was first working on, was the second person to work on?
I think we might have, except we may not understand it fully or have mastered it. Their technology actually integrates with your consciousness, and it is so advanced, it's well beyond our ability to completely understand it. So we probably are like little kids playing with guns, because it does stuff that is beyond our understanding, and we're not ready for it. My personal opinion. However, we probably use things of a lower caliber more regularly. But whose hands is it in? I think that they're like more or less international conglomerates and not necessarily aligned with any one particular government. So that part is more difficult to explain, and it's a little messy. But the whole idea of the fact that there are things from somewhere else, that there is intelligence out there, what fascinated me at a young age is, trying to understand that. And then I had something happen to me at 21 years old, where as a kid, if you'd asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said, yeah, I believe in God, he's love. I had this dream when I was 12 that I was taken to heaven and I experienced God's love. And I understood God as the source of love from that dream. And that's my context of God until I turned 21. Then I had a third dream where he showed me these visions of things that were going on in my life, which was basically a garbage heap at that point in my time in my life. I was a very worldly person. I was a party hound, and I had my own version of morality. And that was basically put in my face in a way that was like undeniable. I'd been to church many times. I had done altar calls and things like that, but I had never been confronted with a reality so profound as that dream. And there was a presence with me in that dream the whole time, and I couldn't see him. He made himself invisible and showing me these different things. When I woke up, I'm sitting there in my bed and I'm recalling the dream. And I remember I finally got to the part that I became aware that there was a presence with me the whole time. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Who was that invisible person? And I'm just talking to myself in my bed. I wasn't expecting an answer, but I heard the name Jesus spoke in my ear. And with that name came that love that I felt when I was a little kid. So he was connecting it to me full circle. Like, by the way, this person that you call God is Jesus. And I didn't even see that before. I didn't understand the Trinity, or, I never read the Bible, and, but I understood him just when he said his name. It's like an understanding of who he is downloaded into me instantly. And I changed that day. I mean, it was so radical. There were things I was addicted to that I just was able to let go without even a second thought. My new addiction was clarity of mind and clarity of consciousness, and to be in the moment and to love my life and love every moment, embrace every moment, and be fully conscious and aware of every moment as I was going through it. That became like my new addiction. And one of the first things that I did is like, what do you want me to do for you, God? That was my whole life, was like, God, please do this for me. God, please do that. Now I'm like, God, is there anything you want me to do? So I started receiving read the Bible, pray, find a church, get baptized, just this boom, 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 like a checklist. So I started reading the Bible, and, Genesis chapter 6, very first book of the Bible I'm reading, and I get to chapter 6 and I'm reading about these otherworldly beings coming down, angels intermarrying with humans, having hybrid children, and it almost destroyed the world, and God brought the flood of Noah to stop it. And I'm like, wait a second. I remember hearing about the flood of Noah when I was a kid, but I never really put much thought into, where did these giants come from? David and Goliath, I remember that story. My grandmother read me that story. But where did the giant come from with 6 fingers, 6 toes? And I'm like, I didn't think angels were biological. So at this time I was in school, right, and taking science and all this stuff, right? And I kind of followed with my dad's way of thinking about biology and evolution, and I sort of allegorized the whole Bible in the beginning, like Adam and Eve must have been some kind of allegory about the beginning of man, and somehow it jives with evolution and the fossil record and all this stuff, right? But then I'm like, now I knew Jesus was real. And in my mind, I'm like, wait a second. I need a clean slate. Wipe it all clean. And then I got to try to come back and reconcile these things and put them together. The Bible is my new foundation. But how does that reconcile with science? How does that reconcile with things that I don't understand, like ETs and stuff? Exactly what are angels? When were angels created? Well, the Bible doesn't actually tell you, right? but it gives you indications. And so with this sort of scientific thinking and all this paranormal knowledge I had accumulated through my youth, because I became encyclopedic. I was like Fox Mulder in the X-Files. My mom literally bought me an encyclopedia of the paranormal when I was a little kid, because I was always asking her about UFOs and ghosts and stuff since my grandma's story at 5. And I had memorized all of this paranormal stuff. I could talk to you about like psychometry, the ability to touch things and get information from them, and astral projection and channeling and
At the age of
hypnosis.
6?
Like at 10 years old, I could be just talking to any person like I knew all of this stuff, right? Because I had an encyclopedia in my head. I would read these books and literally memorize the content without trying, because I was just so interested in it. And that took me down this rabbit hole of all this paranormal stuff. And it got to where reading about it wasn't enough. I did ghost hunting. I experimented with astral projection. I experimented with channeling and scrying and looking into mirror gazing in dark places. And I got my house severely haunted.
Tell me about that.
Messing with Ouija boards and stuff like that. And it's kind of like I opened up all these portals, right? Things were coming in and out, but it was quiet. It was on the downloads. Stuff was just sort of there, creeping around, doing little things here and there. And you would feel presence in our house, but it was for the most part just kind of being quiet.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you know about gematria and the portal 911?
I've heard of gematria, but I don't know about portal 911.
Yeah, like Y2K is 9/11, and 9/11 happened. It's just a lot, but I don't want to go into it. But you can continue. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, all of this stuff was just sort of there, right? Messing with Ouija boards and things like that. And I had so many experiences, and a lot of them I was like, okay, no more of this. For example, I stopped trying to do astral projection because I noticed every time that I got close to it and I started to pop out of my body, things would show up. And I didn't want to encounter anything out of my body because I knew enough about the Bible, like, well, then you're like, maybe that's sort of getting into divination and consulting with familiar spirits. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to things that are out there, right? One time I was floated out of my body and there were 6 beings around my bed trying to grab me and pull me and take me somewhere. And I'm like, no. And I was fighting these things, right? Scared the heck out of me. So I stopped with the astral projection, though I was like still curious about it. But when I got saved, when I woke up from that dream and I dedicated my life to Jesus and everything, I had a really close friend of mine that was really very psychic. I mean, I was in a conversation with this friend on the phone and sitting in my chair in my bedroom upstairs, and my friend said, somebody's listening to us. I'm not going to keep talking. And I said, well, I know what it sounds like when somebody picks the phone up on the other end of the line. She's like, I don't know, but I know somebody's listening to us. Well, what happened is a friend of mine snuck upstairs and had snuck into the bedroom, and he was eavesdropping on the conversation behind me. She knew it on the phone. And so this friend of mine, I was still a friend with this person, right? And it turned out that as I talked to this person about Jesus after I got saved, this person would become kind of angry, and the phone would get staticky and start clicking and clicking, making these weird clicking noises, and then hang up by itself. I would hit redial to call my friend back, and it would go 666 on the display. So there was something demonic going on, right? And I had all kinds of this kind of stuff happening after I got saved. Yes.
That's a portal, yeah.
Oh, my house was Swiss cheese. and this friend actually saw a spirit come to my house, and I actually did an exorcism and I had to cast this thing out. Did several exorcisms, so that's something that's like you have to be there. It's hard to explain going through an exorcism, doing an exorcism on a person, but you can also do an exorcism on a home and cast like everything out. And I had to do that over my house more than once. This house, I guess because of years of doing that, it had a tendency to pull things back. Even, I had the church come pray over the house twice. So I had these things going on, and I think it might have something to do with me and this other person. Maybe a certain gifting or something. Like if a person has the ability, doing an exorcism is a spiritual gift. And I did more than one of them. So if you have that ability, you may also have, as a side effect, draw things to you. Maybe. But what you do with it is you pray the blood of Jesus over it, and you facilitate, moving these things on so that they're no longer trapped here, if they're looking for a way out, if they're lost souls, or whatever they may be. So that all is sort of like part of my personality and part of the things that were going on in my life. But then the writing sort of came about as a fluke. Being in the military, that you travel a lot, and I had time to kill in a hotel room one night, and I had all these notes I'd written in the margin of my Bible. Like I was seeing paranormal things all over the place, like starting with Genesis 6, these giants. Well, they're alien human hybrid, except aliens and angels are sort of the same thing, but not entirely. An angel is a certain type of life form that is, Jesus defined it in Luke 20:36. They're immortal. They cannot die. And they do not reproduce anymore. So here's where I kind of went off and started seeing things that other Christians don't tend to see. For example, a lot of people think of humans and angels, two different categories, right? We will be like the angels. We are not angels. But I think in reality is what you have is that there's a certain category of life that goes through a spiritual metamorphosis once it reaches an age of spiritual maturity, and they become purely immortal at that point. They transform like a butterfly. It's a spiritual metamorphosis. And I think that's what the angels, what happened with them. I think they originally reproduced, and then they reached this maturity level, and then they translated, and they no longer reproduce at that point. They're connected to God. And God didn't create each angel as a hand-created being. He created them to reproduce, just like humans. Every life form on earth reproduces after its own kind. Why would the angels be any different? So there's things that Christians think, conceptions, it's like not actually in the Bible, but they just perceive, all angels were hand-created by God. That makes it more difficult for them to conceive of as an angel as a biological entity. But they actually are biological entities because they crossed with humans and they had tangible results. Deluded, the Nephilim were evil, these giant hybrids, but they could cross with us genetically. So they're a biological entity. That there was a race of humans on this planet before humanity was part of the kingdom of Lucifer. And that kingdom fell and was destroyed. God wiped it out. And the Bible actually talks about all this crazy stuff that I didn't realize was actually there. But when you dig into the actual Hebrew, the Greek, the Aramaic, and you look at the root words and what they actually mean, it's there. It's right in front of you. That angels and ETs are the same thing. And we can understand this wider context of our reality reconciled with the Bible, and also the existence of other life. And I also get into other topics too, like ghosts, other planes of existence, the dimensions of hell, the dimensions of heaven. We live in a multi-dimensional reality, and our science is actually catching up to that with string theory, M theory, multiple dimensions and stuff. Our science can now understand the possibility of parallel dimensions and varying, what the Bible would refer to as varying levels of glory. And I describe all of this in my book, and I use scriptures. Just to give you one example, Jesus said hell is in the heart of the earth. Everybody generically associates hell with down, and they generically associate heaven with up. And those are actually accurate geographically. However, applying another dimension to it, I understand hell as being a smaller planet in a lower dimension. It's an actual, very real, very physical, very tangible place, just like this world.
Mhm.
But it is in a lower dimension and it's a smaller planet. And this planet, Earth, is actually like an onion with all these layers of lithospheres, many layers. And there's lower dimensions and there's higher dimensions. And the Bible describes this first heaven. There are three heavens because the Bible refers to a third heaven. So what are the three heavens? Well, Earth is first heaven in a higher dimension. There's dimensions up there, and angels actually rule in that realm. And it's just like this one in terms of like having a government. Deuteronomy 32 says that the governments of this world are the boundaries of the nations are ascribed to beings that rule over those nations in a higher dimension. Well,
I have
yeah,
something to say. The government must have got its influence through God, and that's why they create like God-like technology. But we're running out of time, so I wanted to know. You can finish what you were going to say. You have the floor for 3 minutes.
okay. Well, with 3 minutes, I just want to say, these books, these are in the Strong Delusion in and Christian Ufology. As I continue to study this UFO ET connection, I noticed a trend that the stuff started pointing to end times revelation and prophecy, things that are coming in the future. So understanding this stuff will help you to understand reality as it unfolds in the days to come. And we see that the ET reality is unfolding before our eyes, and we can't deny it anymore. We can't say it's a hoax. And Christians are going to have a hard time understanding it and reconciling, because a lot of this, there's some deception that comes with it. These Nephilim, for example, they were demonic. They were horrible beings in the Old Testament. And what did these beings do when they came down? They wanted to be worshipped as gods in the Old Testament. Baal, Marduk, Asherah. These were probably demonic entities that were Nephilim and lived physically alive at one point. And then they died, and then they became demons. But we're returning to that. Jesus said we will return to the days of Noah. He said that in Luke, and he said that in the book of Matthew. And what were the days of Noah? Genesis chapter 6. You want to see what our future is going to look like? You read Genesis chapter 6. And I'm trying to prepare us for that. So that's that writing. And I also write some other books, sci-fi, fantasy type stuff, and children's literature. I have this one, and this is a really special story to me for my kids because it's the backstory of Noah's Ark. Genesis 6:20 actually says the animals went to Noah. He didn't go out and round them up. And I'm like, well, wow, that's a huge story. Why hasn't a movie been made on this? Where God called the animals to report to Noah. And it literally says that in Genesis 6:20 that the animals went to Noah in orderly fashion, predator and prey, setting aside their differences and peacefully going to him during the most violent time in Earth's history. So that is an awesome kid's story, in my opinion, and it's one of the other books that I've written. So please visit my website, everybody, and for anybody that wants a book to read for free, I will email you a copy, any of my books for free. If you just email me, my email address is on my website, and I'll send you a free copy. I do hope that in return you would at least give me an Amazon review, but I will totally give you any book away for anybody who's willing to give me an Amazon review. Just email me, and that's my final pitch for anybody who's interested in anything I had to say.
This was so much wonderful information. Thank you so much, John. Did you give out your email? Because what is your email again, and what is whatever information, how to find you and how to reach you?
Okay. I don't know if everybody's seeing my name right here on your deal,
Yes.
www.johnmyler. That's my author website. I
Okay.
also have other websites, christianufology.net. That's kind of easy to remember. aliensinthebible.com, aliensandtheantichrist.com, thestrongdelusion.net. Those are all my websites that they go to this author page. And my email address is jmyler@yahoo.com. My email address is on my author website. So if you go to one of my websites, you could just type my name in Google. You usually see me in there. And it would go to my author website. You could email me, and I'll be more than willing to answer any questions. I always personally answer all of my emails because I don't get flooded by email to the extent that I can't answer every email that's ever been sent to me. So I do look forward to any interaction anybody wants to send my way.
Well, thank you, John. Stay on the line. Thank you guys for joining my show today. Y'all take care, be safe, and I will see you guys another time. Bye.